Now, little dreamer, lie down and pull the blanket close because Grandpa's got a story for you tonight. A story with sea mist, old magic, and glowing lanterns that never go out. There once was a village nestled by the edge of a great and endless sea. Not a sea of roaring waves and crashing storms, no, but a sea forever cloaked in fog. From morning till night, and all through the quiet hours in between, the mist would roll in and dance gently through the streets of the village. Some said the sea whispered in that mist, carrying voices from a time long past. Others said it was just the wind, but those who listened carefully knew better. This village was old, older than the hills behind it, and older than the stones beneath its feet. The houses leaned slightly with age, their windows thick with sea salt and memory. Little gardens bloomed with lavender and moonflowers, and cats wandered the roofs at twilight like furry shadows. It was a place where time moved gently, and clocks ticked more slowly, as if respecting the stillness of the fog. But the most curious thing of all, what truly set the village apart, was the lanterns. Each house had a lantern hanging by the door, not powered by oil or fire, but glowing from within, with a soft golden light that never flickered. They lit themselves at dusk and dimmed at dawn. No one knew exactly how they worked, except for one person, the lantern keeper. He lived at the very edge of the village, in a round little cottage with a crooked chimney and a roof covered in moss. His name was Silas. Silas, the lantern keeper. Some said he was older than the village itself, though he still walked with a strong step and a voice as calm as ocean stones. He wore a long blue coat with silver thread at the sleeves and always smelled faintly of cedar wood and smoke. Every evening, just before the first star appeared in the sky, Silas would walk through the village with a staff made of driftwood, carved all over with strange symbols and soft curves. He would check each lantern, tap it gently with the staff, and whisper a word only he knew. And just like that, the lanterns would glow, golden, warm, and comforting. The children of the village loved to follow him at a distance, hiding behind gates and tree trunks, watching with wide eyes as the lights came to life. Silas always knew they were there. Sometimes he'd turn suddenly and wink, sending them into a fit of giggles before they scattered like leaves in the wind. But no one, not even the children, had ever been inside Silas's cottage. The inside of the lantern keeper's home was a mystery wrapped in fog and wonder. Some imagined it was filled with glowing orbs floating in the air like fireflies caught in amber. Others whispered about ancient books and maps made of starlight. Whatever the truth, Silas never said. He would just smile that secret smile and say, "Some doors open only in their own time." One particularly foggy evening, something strange happened. Clara, a curious and thoughtful girl of 11 winters, sat on the old stone bench near the baker's shop, watching Silas do his rounds. She loved the way the fog curled around his staff, the way the lanterns flared like magic candles. She always stayed quiet, respectful, never following too closely. But tonight, as Silas tapped the lantern by old Mrs. Hembel's door, the light did not come on. He frowned, tapped again. Nothing. Then he turned and looked directly at Clara, his eyes a pale gray like the mist. And in that moment, she saw something in his face, an uncertainty she had never seen before. "Come here, child," he said gently, his voice as soft as drifting snow. Clara stood slowly. "Yes, sir." Silas looked back at the unlit lantern. There's a change in the air tonight. Something stirring in the mist. Clara blinked. What kind of something? He turned to her fully and knelt down until they were eye level. A secret waiting to be woken, and I think it's time someone helped me find it. Clara felt her heart quicken. Me? Silas smiled. If you're brave enough. And so began the quiet adventure of Clara and the Lantern Keeper, a journey that would take them through forgotten paths, ancient memories, and truths that could only be seen when the fog was thick and the heart was open. The night was colder than usual. The fog hung thicker, like a woolen blanket wrapped too tightly around the village. As Clara followed Silas through the cobbled streets, she noticed something odd. None of the other lanterns were lighting. One by one, Silas tapped them with his carved driftwood staff, whispered his secret word, and nothing. Only darkness answered. This has never happened before, Silas murmured, more to himself than to her. Is it broken? Clara asked, trying not to sound too frightened. Not broken, he replied, his voice steady and calm, but waiting. Something shifted, and when the lanterns grow quiet, it means the village is ready to remember something it forgot. Clara didn't quite understand what he meant, but she nodded anyway. There was a comfort in walking beside him, like holding on to a warm blanket in a cold room. They walked until they reached the last cottage on the southern edge of the village, where the sea fog was so thick you could barely see your own hand. Silas stopped before a small iron gate hidden behind ivy and mist. He reached into his coat and pulled out an old brass key. I haven't opened this gate in nearly 70 years, he said. Clara's eyes widened. Why not? Because it wasn't time. He looked at her then, his eyes serious and kind. But tonight, time is stirring. The door in the mist is waking. The key turned in the lock with a long-forgotten click, and the gate creaked open. Beyond it, a narrow path wound through trees whose branches dripped with dew and silence. Owls watched from high perches, and somewhere far off, a single chime rang, soft and distant. The two walked slowly, Clara gripping the edge of her coat tight. The trees parted at the end of the path to reveal a clearing with a single stone doorway standing alone. No walls, no roof, just the frame of a tall arched door covered in moss and carvings. This, Silas whispered, is the door in the mist. There was no door inside the frame, just swirling fog, thick and silver like liquid moonlight. Clara stepped closer. What's on the other side? Silas smiled faintly. That depends on who enters. The door opens to the one memory the village can't forget, but also can't quite remember. She turned to him, puzzled. Then how will we find it? With lantern light, he said, reaching into his coat again and pulling out something glowing, a small orb of golden light, the size of a plum, nestled in a lantern frame of fine silver wire. He handed it to Clara. This is the heart lantern. It burns with your courage, your kindness, and your truth. Only you can carry it. Clara held it gently, amazed by its warmth. It hummed in her hand, as if alive. Silas tapped his staff on the ground once. When you step through the doorway, you'll find yourself in the past, but not your past. The villages, pieces of its old heart, scattered and hidden. You'll need to gather them. Clara looked at the swirling mist. Will you come with me? Silas shook his head. This part of the journey is yours alone, but I'll be waiting when you return. Taking a deep breath, Clara stepped through the archway. The mist swallowed her whole. The fog faded like a curtain drawn aside, and Clara found herself standing in the middle of the village square. But it was not the village she knew. The cottages were newer, their roofs still bright with fresh thatch. Children ran through the streets with paper kites and painted wooden tops. Music drifted from open windows, fiddles and flutes, the sound of joy. The fog was gone. The air was clear and sweet. Clara looked around, her heart racing. Was this the village before the fog? Her lantern glowed brighter in her hands, pulsing softly. She walked slowly, marveling at the scene. A kindly woman offered her an apple from a barrel, smiling. New around here, love? Clara nodded. Just visiting. The woman chuckled. Well, welcome to Loring's Hollow. Festival's starting soon. You won't want to miss the lantern lighting. Lantern lighting. Clara's pulse quickened. She followed the crowd to the village green, where a large wooden stage had been set up. Children danced, people sang, and at the center of it all stood a man with silver-threaded robes and a voice that rolled like thunder through honey. He lifted a great lantern high above his head, a golden flame already burning within it. This light, he said, is the heart of our village. As long as it glows, we will remember who we are. Clara watched in awe as the villagers lit their own lanterns from the great one, passing the flame from hand to hand. It was beautiful, but as she looked more closely, she noticed something strange. In the shadows behind the crowd, a figure stood still, unmoving, not joining in, watching. The figure wore a dark cloak, and wherever it stood, the fog seemed to creep in again, curling like smoke around its feet. Clara took a step toward it, and suddenly the world rippled. The music faltered, the lanterns flickered. A deep, quiet voice echoed in her ear. Not all memories are light. Then everything went dark. When Clara opened her eyes, the golden light of her heart lantern shimmered faintly, guiding her through the dark. She was no longer in the lively, cheerful village from before. This place was dimmer, quieter. The cottages were still there, but empty. The windows dark. The air heavy. It felt forgotten. She stepped carefully, her shoes crunching over old withered leaves that hadn't been swept in many seasons. There were no children laughing, no music, no scent of bread in the air. Even the sky seemed to have turned to slate. The fog was back. Clara held up her lantern, and as its golden light spilled outward, she saw a faint trail, little sparks, barely visible, floating just above the ground like breadcrumbs made of memory. She followed them, down the empty street, around the old bakery, now shuttered, past the well that hadn't drawn water in years. The trail led her to a house she didn't recognize, tucked behind overgrown hedges and wrapped in ivy so thick it looked more plant than home. The door creaked open at her touch. Inside, dust lay thick on every surface. Picture frames with faded faces hung crooked on the walls. Toys sat abandoned in the corner, their colors faded. The fireplace held only cold ash. And yet, the sparks floated up the stairs. Clara climbed slowly. At the top was a room with a low ceiling and a small bed tucked beneath a round window. On the bed sat a girl no older than Clara, dressed in a nightgown stitched with little stars. She didn't move, didn't blink, but her eyes shimmered with tears that never fell. Clara stepped closer. "Hello?" The girl looked at her, and her voice came out like wind through old curtains. "They forgot my story." Clara knelt beside her. "Who?" The girl touched her chest. "The village. They forgot I was here. I used to light lanterns, too." Paused. Then she looked up, pleading, "Can you help me remember?" Clara's lantern flared gently. and a warmth filled the room. The shadows eased, the dust stirred, the girl's form flickered like a candle behind a veil. Suddenly, the room changed. Clara saw it as it once was, bright and loved. The girl's laughter rang through the space as she danced with a ribbon in her hand. A man and woman smiled from the doorway. A dog barked happily. There was life here once, joy, and then fog. Clara watched as it crept in, silent and gray. The family packed quickly. Others came to help. But in the rush, in the fear, the little girl was left behind just for a moment, just long enough for the door to close and the forgetting to begin. I waited, the girl whispered, voice now clearer. I waited till the light stopped coming, until no one said my name anymore. Clara's throat tightened. She took the girl's hand. I see you now. I remember you. The lantern's light pulsed, and from within the girl's chest, something golden rose, a small glowing heart of light, shaped like a flame. Clara reached out. It hovered into her hand, warm and calm. The first forgotten heart, a voice echoed, Cyrus's voice, distant but near. Clara looked back. The girl was gone. The room was quiet again, but something had changed. A warmth lingered, a promise kept. As she stepped back outside, the fog receded slightly. The path ahead glowed. There were more forgotten hearts to find. She took a breath and followed the light. The journey took Clara through unfamiliar corners of the village, places even the oldest maps no longer marked. Her lantern led her down cobbled roads and broken paths, through bramble and quiet, and then to the river. The river that once ran through the heart of the village had long since disappeared beneath layers of fog and stone, but Clara could hear it, soft, low, like a lullaby, hummed in the dark. She stood at the edge of a dry riverbed where ghostly water shimmered faintly under her lantern's glow, and there, in the center of the riverbed, stood a bell. It was large, green with age, half buried in the silt. Ivy clung to its sides, and runes were etched around its lip, runes that glowed softly as Clara approached. A voice rang out, not harsh, but deep and sad. You found me. The bell pulsed with a faint light. I rang once every morning, it said, to wake the village, to greet the sun. But one morning, the sun did not come, only mist, and I was silenced. Clara laid a hand on the cold metal. Why didn't they ring you again? They were afraid, the bell replied. The mist whispered lies, told them the sound would call shadows, so they stopped listening. Clara closed her eyes. Her lantern flared with golden warmth, and in the silence she hummed the melody she'd heard near the river's edge, the lullaby hidden in the wind. The bell shimmered. That song, that was mine. It shook gently at first, then with growing strength, dust fell from its crown. The runes glowed bright, and then, bong! A single deep note rolled through the village like thunder wrapped in silk. Not loud, not harsh, but powerful. Remembered, the river shimmered in response. Water flickered, invisible but real. Trees along its edge rustled as if waking from a long sleep. From within the bell's hollow base, something golden floated upward. The second forgotten heart. Clara reached for it. It nestled beside the first, warm and steady. She looked up at the distant sky, where the fog seemed to be thinning. So many hearts still to find, so many pieces still waiting. With the lantern held close and her courage lit from within, Clara turned to the path ahead. The next memory was calling. Clara wandered past the river's edge, the echo of the bell still humming faintly in her bones. The fog had thinned now, only slightly, but enough to reveal outlines of old buildings long thought lost. Her hot lantern, glowing warmer with every step, guided her toward the tallest shape yet. A crooked tower covered in vines and thyme. At its top, a massive clock face stared silently over the village, but it had no hands. The numbers, though faded, were still clear, etched in curling script, like music, frozen in metal. Time had stopped here, or perhaps it had never begun. Clara stepped through the door at the base of the tower. It creaked open to a spiraling staircase of iron and wood, each step groaning with age. She climbed slowly, her lantern lighting the path. As she reached the top, she found a room filled with gears, great bronze wheels, silent and still. They rested like sleeping giants in a nest of cobwebs. A heavy silence hung in the air, disturbed only by the occasional soft click of a gear twitching, as if dreaming. In the center of the room stood a small stool, and on it a little boy, no older than 6, curled up beneath a dusty shawl. He looked up with tired eyes. "I was the timekeeper," he said softly. "I watched the village, counted the moments, rang the bells." Clara knelt beside him. "Why did you stop?" The boy sniffled. "One day the clocks all slowed. People stopped listening. They said, 'Time is strange now. We don't need it anymore.' So I sat here and waited for time to come back." Clara reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small wooden token the baker had given her earlier, a circle carved with a sun and moon. She offered it to him. "It's not a clock hand," she said, "but maybe it can help us remember time." The boy's fingers curled around it. His eyes widened, and the room began to hum. The gears turned. One by one, the massive wheels clicked back into place. The clock above ticked once, twice, then began to chime. A slow, beautiful rhythm like a heartbeat, like rain on rooftops. The clock face outside glowed golden, and 2 delicate hands made of light grew outward from the center, pointing upward toward hope. The boy smiled and stood tall. From his chest rose a golden shape, gentle and warm, the 3rd forgotten heart. Clara gathered it, and the air around her shimmered with a breeze that carried the scent of honey and old wood. The tower door opened on its own, revealing a new path, one lined with glowing stones, leading deeper into memory. Clara took a breath and stepped forward, the weight of time now restored. Beyond the tower, Clara's feet touched soft moss. The path narrowed until it opened into a circular glade filled with plants, tall blue ferns, silvery roses, and flowers that whispered softly to one another as the wind passed through. It was unlike any garden she had ever seen. In the center stood a tree, not tall but wide and ancient. Its branches curved like arms around the entire garden, and in its trunk was a hollow space just big enough for someone to sit inside. And someone was. An old woman with skin like bark and hair like vines watched Clara approach with eyes full of soil and starlight. "You brought light," she said, nodding toward the lantern. Clara dipped her head respectfully. "Are you the gardener?" "I was," the woman said. "This garden once bloomed from dreams. The villagers would come at night and whisper their hopes into the leaves. By morning, the flowers would grow, shaped by those wishes." She sighed. But the fog brought silence. No one dreamed anymore, and the garden forgot how to bloom. Clara looked around. Many of the plants now drooped, their colors dim. The trees' bark had dulled. "What if we tried again?" Clara said gently. "What if we dreamed right now?" The old woman smiled, the kind of smile that cracked the earth and let something new grow. Clara knelt in the soft moss and closed her eyes. I dream of a village that remembers, that sings in the rain, that lights lanterns and tells stories, she whispered. The garden listened, the ground shivered beneath her. Then, all at once, color bloomed back into the world. The silvery roses blushed with gold. The ferns unfurled. The tree above them shimmered as leaves of light burst forth like applause. The old woman stood slowly and touched Clara's shoulder. You've given the garden its voice. From the soil at Clara's feet, a soft light rose, the fourth forgotten art. She caught it, and the entire garden sang, not with sound, but with a feeling so pure and peaceful it brought tears to her eyes. Go, the gardener said. There are more to find, but you carry a forest in your soul now. Clara walked on, her lantern burning brighter than ever. The trail curved through a gate of carved stone where fog lingered like hesitant thoughts. Ahead stood a library, long abandoned, its doors carved with symbols of quills, feathers, and stars. Clara stepped inside and found rows upon rows of shelves, many of them bare, others full of dusty tomes untouched by time. But at the center was a pedestal holding a single book. Its cover was blank. Its pages turned slowly on their own, despite the still air. She approached. Words appeared on the pages, faint, then clearer, as though revealing themselves for the first time in ages. The Book of Vanished Names. Clara turned a page. There were names, hundreds, maybe thousands, all written in delicate script, but every one of them was faded, smudged, barely visible. These are the names the village forgot, said a voice behind her. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man with ink-stained hands and eyes like candle smoke. I was the keeper of names, he said. Each person's name held a story, a life, but the fog took them. The village began calling each other sir and ma'am and you there. The names faded. Clara touched a page and whispered, Anya. A faint glow returned to the name. Another name, Tomlin. Brighter, name after name, she whispered, Era, Finn, Kavi, Lenore. The book glowed like fireflies caught in a storm. Page by page, the names returned. The keeper's eyes welled with grateful tears, and then, as the last page turned, a name appeared in golden ink. Clara. Her breath caught. You remember yourself, said the keeper. From the center of the book, a heart of light rose, bright, brave, and warm. The fifth forgotten heart. She caught it, and the shelves around her filled with books, hundreds of them, all waiting to be read, to be remembered. The library doors opened wide. The path called once more. Clara stepped out of the library and found that the path ahead had changed. Where once there was forest and stone, now there was only open air. A single staircase of light floated upward into the sky, each step barely there, like mist that had decided to solidify just long enough to carry her forward. She took the first step, then another and another. Up she climbed, the lantern in her hand burning steady and sure, its golden glow forming a small sun in the twilight around her. The higher she rose, the more the world below faded. The rooftops, the river, the clock tower, soft silhouettes beneath a veil of clouds, until finally she arrived. Suspended in the air was a small island, no bigger than the village square, yet covered in green grass and wildflowers that shimmered with stars instead of petals. In its center stood a great tree, taller than any she'd ever seen. Its trunk was wide as a house, and its leaves curled and flickered with light, like paper lanterns in a breeze. Beneath it sat a boy, maybe a year older than Clara, writing in the air with a quill that left glowing ink behind. He didn't look up when she approached. "Are you writing dreams?" she asked. He nodded. Once, this island drifted through the skies, collecting the dreams the villagers didn't know they had. I kept them safe here. But when the fog came, the dreams stopped arriving, and the island stopped drifting. Clara sat beside him. "Can I write one?" He looked at her and handed her the quill. Clara closed her eyes and thought of her mother's lullabies, of the laughter in the bakery, of the bells in the garden, and the stories and the faces she hadn't yet seen. And then, with slow strokes, she wrote, "I dream of remembering the dreams we forgot." The ink shimmered, then lifted into the air, joining thousands of others that hung like constellations around the tree. The island stirred. It breathed, and from the roots of the dream tree rose a soft golden light, the sixth forgotten fire. Clara caught it, and as she did, the tree's branches reached toward the stars, releasing dozens of glowing orbs into the sky. They flew down toward the village below, dreams returning to the ones who had lost them. The boy smiled, his task complete. "Time to drift again," he said. "The island remembers." And as the path of light reformed before her, leading down, Clara took one last look at the sky-born world and stepped forward, the dreams carrying her onward. As Clara descended from the sky, the clouds parted to reveal a narrow road lined with tall hedges. The fog had returned here heavier than before, swirling with a quiet ache. At the end of the road stood a house. Its paint was peeling, its windows shuttered. But the garden was full of toys, wooden ducks, cloth dolls, spinning tops, and tiny shoes scattered like petals from a forgotten spring. Clara stepped through the creaking gate, pushed open the heavy door. Inside, the silence was thick. Rows upon rows of cradles filled the main room. Each one was empty, each one covered in dust. But as Clara moved closer, she heard them. Soft lullabies, distant and sorrowful, like music from a music box buried deep beneath the earth. A woman stood near the hearth, her dress gray and her face lined with years of waiting. "I was the keeper of beginnings," she said softly. "Every new child born in the village spent their first night here. I cradled them in my arms and whispered their names to the stars." Clara looked around. Why did they stop coming? The fog made them forget joy, forget hope. They stopped having children. They stopped believing in beginnings. Tears welled in the woman's eyes. "I still sang the lullabies," she whispered, "but no one came." Clara stepped toward a cradle near the center of the room and placed her lantern within it. It glowed like a newborn sun. The cradle rocked, and the lullabies grew louder. One by one, the cradles filled, not with children, but with golden light, like seeds waiting to be planted. Each one hummed softly. The house warmed. The woman smiled through tears. "You remembered the beginning. Thank you." From her chest, a small golden light rose, the seventh forgotten heart. Clara caught it, and suddenly, outside, laughter echoed faintly, distant but real. Somewhere, the village was waking up. She walked through the open door, past the spinning tops now dancing on their own, and into the next chapter of memory. The path wound through the ruins of what must have once been a workshop. Wax dripped from crumbled shelves, and shattered molds littered the ground. The air smelled faintly of lavender and old smoke. Clara found a single flame still burning, tiny and determined, atop a short, misshapen candle. Beside it sat a boy no older than her, his clothes smudged with soot, his eyes fixed on the flame. "I used to help my mother make candles," he said. "We'd carve them with stories and hide bits of songs inside. People would light them during storms and feel safe again." He touched the flame gently, but then the fog came, and everyone said the light attracted shadows, so they stopped lighting candles, and our stories melted away. Clara pulled the lantern close. "What if we made one more candle?" The boy's eyes lit up. "Would you help?" Together they melted bits of leftover wax. They carved it with tiny symbols, bells, books, hearts, stars, and Clara whispered a story into its core. Then the boy set it on the table and struck a match. The candle flared to life, and the room came alive. Shelves rebuilt themselves, molds straightened, colors returned to the wax. It was as if the candle's light was rewriting time itself. From the heart of the flame, a golden light rose, the age-forgotten heart. Clara caught it, and the candle glowed even brighter, casting shadows that danced with joy. The boy smiled. "Keep the flame going wherever you go." Clara nodded and stepped once more into the mist, her light now steadier, her heart now fuller. Beyond the candlemaker's workshop, the path dipped downward through thick weeds and damp grass until Clara reached the edge of a vast, mirror-like lake. The surface was perfectly still, so still that even the clouds refused to ripple it. A single canoe waited on the shore, its frame carved from silver birch, its oar wrapped in velvet. Clara stepped in and pushed off. As the canoe glided across the lake, the silence deepened. No birds, no breeze. Even her breath seemed muted. The lantern's light barely pierced the mist, glowing faintly across the glassy water. Then something shimmered beneath her. Shapes, towers, trees. A whole village lay submerged beneath the lake, its buildings ghostly and half visible. At the center of the lake, a canoe stopped, as if caught by unseen hands. And then, slowly, she sank, gently, as if drawn down by breathless memory. Underwater, everything remained dry. The buildings stood preserved, covered in moss and pearl. Lanterns still hung on doors. Laundry drifted like seaweed on invisible wind. She walked the cobbled streets until she reached the village square. In the center was a fountain, frozen mid-flow, and beside it sat an old man, draped in robes of kelp and mist. "The drowned village," he said without surprise. "This place was forgotten because of grief. It sank when the villagers stopped speaking their sorrows aloud. The silence drowned it." Clara looked around. Can it rise again? The man's eyes, deep and kind, held sorrow. Only if someone listens. So she sat, and the man began to speak, not just of his life, but of others, regrets, joys, losses, love. As he spoke, others came, silent villagers with hollow eyes, drawn by the sound of a willing heart. Clara listened. For hours, or maybe minutes or days, she let the sorrow fill the space between them. And in that space, healing began. A hum vibrated beneath her feet. The fountain trickled. The village began to rise. The water parted around it as if in reverence, returning the sun and wind and birdsong to its lanes. And from the center of the square, where silence had once ruled, a golden light bloomed, the night forgotten heart. Clara held it close as she climbed back into her canoe, the lake now rippling with the voices of a world remembered. The lake's shore now curled into a meadow bursting with dandelions. As Clara stepped onto the grass, they burst into white tufts and lifted into the sky. One by one, they drifted upward, until they formed a spiraling staircase into the clouds. She followed. Up and up she climbed, and as she did, stars flickered beside her, each one whispering a name. A voice met her at the summit. Every star is someone remembered. She arrived at a platform of crystal, suspended above the world. An old woman stood beside a massive telescope carved from starlight and bone. She adjusted dials that hummed like lullabies. "I remember everyone who was ever forgotten," she said. "It's my task. But even I forget sometimes." She stepped back, and Clara peered into the telescope. Through it, she saw moments. A baker singing as he kneaded dough. A gardener planting a seed with hope in her eyes. A child whispering a dream into a jar. "Why did they vanish?" Clara asked. "Because no one looked for them," the woman said. "And looking is the first act of love." Clara placed the 9 glowing hearts on the telescope stand. The telescope shimmered, refocused, and then it sang. A single, clear note that echoed into the sky. The stars flickered wildly, rearranging themselves into shapes Clara recognized. Elliot's smile, her mother's voice, the village at sunrise. From the heart of the song rose a glowing ember, the 10th forgotten heart. She held it close, and for the first time, the stars bowed. Clara descended the stair of stars into a valley where time moved in reverse. She saw flowers unbloom, petals curling into buds. Trees dropped ripe fruit upward into their branches. Rivers flowed uphill. In the center of it all, kneeling among uprooted lilies, was a girl, just like Clara, but younger. Clara watched as the girl planted seeds in the soil, then unplanted them, burying memory after memory. "I didn't want to forget," the girl said, though she never looked up. But the pain of remembering was worse. Clara knelt beside her. Sometimes remembering hurts, but forgetting hurts longer. The girl looked up, and her face was Clara's, younger still, wide-eyed with longing. They sat in silence for a long time, surrounded by reverse-growing trees and sunbeams that slid back into clouds. Then Clara reached forward and touched the soil. She planted one seed, a single moment of joy, her mother lifting her as the bells rang on a snowy morning. Time paused, then began to move forward again. The garden bloomed, colors rushed back. Laughter filled the air like petals caught in a summer wind. From the newly blossomed rosebush rose the 11th forgotten heart, pulsing with the color of spring. The younger, Clara smiled. "I remember," she said, then faded gently. Clara walked on, more whole than she had been. Past the garden, Clara entered a maze of mirrored walls, endless corridors reflecting endless versions of herself. Some mirrors showed her as she was. Others showed her angry, frightened, lonely, proud, laughing, tired, brave. She wandered through for what felt like hours. Each mirror whispered. Each reflection reached out. "You're not enough. You're too much. You'll fail. You'll forget. You will never be whole." And then, one voice among the noise said, "You are all of us, and we are all you." Clara stopped before a mirror that didn't reflect her at all. Instead, it showed the village, bright, whole, ticking with memory and life. She reached out. The mirror cracked, then shattered. All the mirrors did. And from the floor rose a brilliant heart of gold and glass, the 12th forgotten heart. She took it, and the maze faded into trees and sky. At the edge of the world, where the land gave way to stars and the air smelled of bells, stood a tower. It reached higher than clouds, its peak hidden in starlight. Its face bore no numbers. Its hands stood still. At the base, Elliot waited. He smiled and opened the door. You've found them all, he said. The forgotten hearts, the lost pieces, the stories scattered by time. Clara stepped inside. The tower hummed with potential. As she climbed its spiral steps, each glowing heart floated from her hands and settled into place within the tower's great machinery, one by one, until all 16 hearts clicked into place. Then the hands began to move. Tick, tock. The tower sang, not with chimes, but with every star and every voice, every laugh and tear and whisper that had ever filled the village. Clara stepped onto the balcony. Below, the village bloomed. Fog vanished. Children played. The baker sang. The clockmaker's shop whirred to life. Gardens glowed. Dreams flew from chimneys like butterflies. And Clara? She smiled, not because the journey was over, but because the village had remembered, and so had she. Now then, my dear one, it's time to close your eyes and let the world grow quiet around you. You've walked a long, soft path tonight, through stories and dreams, through old memories and gentle wonders. And now, Grandpa's here, watching over you with all the love in my old sleepy heart. The night is calm. The rain taps lightly on the roof. The wind hums its lullaby in the trees, and you are safe, warm, and oh so cherished. Let go of the day's troubles. Let your thoughts melt away like morning mist. You've done enough, little one. It's time to rest. So take a deep breath. And another. Feel the peace wrap around you like a heavy quilt stitched with kindness. I'll be right here in every ticking clock and every quiet star. Sleep well, sweet dreamer. Grandpa's stories will be waiting again when you wake. Good night, and may your dreams be soft as feather beds and bright as fireflies in the dark. Sleep tight.